It's another Fairfolk Friday, and today we're going to look at a Greek Fairfolk. The native inhabitants of the island of Rhodes, the Telchines. I apologize for my pronunciation. The descriptions of these creatures seem to be varying levels of dog-headed merpeople, serving a role similar to dwarves and the, also Greek elder cyclopses, in certain iterations of the myth being responsible for the making of Poseidon's trident, as well as Cronus' sickle. And their origins seem to change depending on region and time period. Sometimes they are the child of Gaia, sometimes of Nemesis, sometimes Poseidon, sometimes coming from the eunuching of Uranus, or the literal dogs of Actaeon being made humanoid. So trying to get a coherent story about them gets kind of difficult. But they are almost always two things: great blacksmiths creating great weapons even for gods, and vengeful magic users. It's another Fairfolk Friday, and today we're venturing in a different direction than we usually do. Because today we're going to talk about the Grootslang, which is an African mythical creature. The Grootslang is said to be a combination of an elephant and a python, being way more appropriately sized for the elephant. But even the gods who were new to creation knew that this creature should not exist. So separate them into what is today the elephant and the python. However, one escaped. That one escaped into an area that is now known as the Wonder Cave in South Africa by the Orange River, where it is said to guard immense amounts of treasure, and every so often lure elephants to eat into it. And every so often humans will wander into the cave, only able to escape if they have diamonds so the Grootslang can replace its eyes. Did you know that there is a mythical creature that the Celtic people and the Nordic people share? And I'm not talking about mythical comparison. It's another Fairfolk Friday, and today I am talking about the Stoor Wyrm. While the most famous story of the Stoor Wyrm comes from Orkney in Scotland, it, however, has multiple stories throughout both the Celtic Isles and some Nordic regions. And in certain Irish stories, the Stoor Wyrm is referred to as an olifeist, which is a type of dragon who once had wings. However, other dragons removed its wings for some nefarious action against dragonkind. And if his actions were considered nefarious by its own kind, you can imagine what it did to the people that it often pursued for food. Doing so in such a manner that much of the Celtic archipelago's landscape is because of the Stoor dragon moving through it. And during the time that Orkney was ruled by Nordic kings, it struck again. The king of Orkney was advised to sacrifice 7 virgins every Saturday to appease the creature. It took a very short amount of time for the peasantry to be like, we can't keep sacrificing our daughters like this. When the king asked the sorcerer for another solution, the only option that came up would be to sacrifice his own daughter, Princess Gem de Lovely. Not wanting to sacrifice his own daughter, the king expressed across the kingdom and across other lands that he would be willing to give up his kingdom, his magic sword that was inherited through his line getting it from Odin, and his daughter's hand in marriage to whoever would slay the dragon. Every hero nearby shied away from fighting the Stoor Wyrm. And so it seemed that he would be forced to sacrifice his own daughter. But on the shore in which she was about to be sacrificed arrived a new hero, Sobhail. The people were very skeptical of this development because Sobhail is well known for being lazy at this point. Being the 7th son and 10th child of a well-known farmer, and being the youngest child, didn't do much. And for his attempt, Sobhail got swallowed by the Stoor Wyrm. However, he was able to go deep into the Stoor Wyrm's stomach, and then from his pocket take out a hot peat and stab it into the worm's liver. This caused the Stoor Wyrm to regurgitate our hero, of course, and it started thrashing in pain, being unable to control its fire, and the searing pain kept gnawing at itself, trying to stop the pain. It gnawed so hard that its teeth fell out and created the Faroe Isles. It bit its own tongue off, which became the Shetlands. The Stoor Dragon would eventually swim off, and eventually would encircle itself in its dying moments, creating the island of Iceland. And so this lazy seventh son became king of Orkney. As is often the case in folklore, there's different variations to this, whether it's which part of the Stoor Wyrm is exactly what. In some cases that this is actually an origin myth for the Orkney Isles instead of taking place in Orkney. But the story is always a very interesting, to use a term very loosely, Norse-scale representation, with some variations of these folktales stating that the Stoor Wyrm is a son of Jormungandr. I appreciate you all for watching this, and remember to be vigilant. It's another Fair Folk Friday, and today I'm going to teach you about the field elves in Russia. Excuse my pronunciation, but the Pavaro. Among the most territorial of the fair folk. As the name field elf implies, they generally reside in fields, predominantly rye, oat, and grain fields, with certain traditions telling children to be wary of the ant in the rye. The fields act as both their homes and their hiding spots, and they allow humans to, tend to the fields, but only if they know how to do it correctly. Going as so far as anyone who wanders into the fields, they will ask questions about how to cultivate the field. Many who answer incorrectly or not at all are said to pay with their lives. And if you accidentally injure one with farm equipment, they will attack. However, you can cure such wounds with tree bark. I am actually on time for once. It is Fair Folk Friday. And today we're going to talk about the Chessmen of Lewis, which was an actual set of chess pieces found on the Isle of Lewis, and is one of the first chess pieces ever found to have bishops and queens as pieces. Currently in the British Museum, because of course it is, despite the Isle of Lewis being in Scotland, there is actually fairy lore connected to these. Even today, there are reports that the guard dogs of the museum do not like going towards the actual set. They were reportedly found in a beehive-shaped building that was in a cave. And supposedly the original laborer who found them ran after he saw the pieces. Something in the cave made him believe that inside the chess pieces were sleeping fairies. Perhaps the dogs are onto something. It's another Fair Folk Friday, and today we return to the manliest of isles, the Isle of Man, to look at the Glashen. And while obviously they can come from the Isle of Man, they can live in any rivers or deep lakes in Wales, Scotland, Orkney, or Shetland, which is specifically interesting because the rough size of most Glashens are the size of Shetland ponies. Effectively, they always appear as miniature horses, though they can also appear as young lambs, foals, and sometimes humans. And while considered less bloodthirsty than the Kelpies or anything similar, they are also to be avoided. While seeing them can be seen as a good omen, following them, especially to large areas of water, is no less deadly for you. For even the Glashen feast on those who follow them and drown. It's another Fair Folk Friday! And today, bros, we're going to be looking at the Aderyn Faenol, the bird of Faenol. Faenol is an estate in North Wales that dates back to the Tudor dynasty and has a very interesting haunting. It is said at night that you can hear the cries of someone saying, "Woe, woe is me, that I ever put a handle to my axe to fell the trees of Faenol." And when people investigate the sounds, the only thing they can find is a corvid in one of the trees. Legend has it that somehow a man was cursed for illegally foresting, stealing wood from the estate of Faenol. People nearby often claim that they can see an ethereal humanoid with bird-like aspects to his appearance. Perhaps cursed by nobility or the Tualith. It's another Fairfolk Friday, aren't we excited? Today I'm going to talk about a Fairfolk that most claim are extinct. Particularly the English Fairfolk, the Portune. Technically this is a French Fairfolk with a lot of them immigrating to England, but most of the lore is associated with England. And as you can imagine from that one picture, they are always 1 inch tall, making them the smallest of the majority of Fairfolk. Despite their small size, they are known for 2 things: incredible mischief and actually being really helpful on the farm. Primarily that is where they live, farmhouses. They get a lot done because they are communal creatures. They work together by nature and are often in groups of hundreds or thousands. While they take a childish delight in basically giving wrong directions, making people walk through mud, that sort of thing, they are said to bring luck to those whose houses they're in. It is, however, believed they either died out or went high. It's another Fairfolk Friday, and today we're going into a Scottish Fairfolk. So today we're going to talk about the Badachan Sobhail. When the peat will turn grey and shadows fall deep, and weary old Callum is snoring asleep, the little old man of the barn will thresh with no light in the mouth of the night, the little old man from the barn. So this Fairfolk is very much effectively a barn brownie. Technically not a house sprite, but a household sprite. They seem to be Fairfolk who take pity on old men who are working on farms, perhaps with no children, and they will do some of the farm work for them, especially anything that is like a very strenuous activity, such as collecting wheat and corn. They usually also take the appearance of an old man. Particularly in Scottish folklore, it's very odd that this one seems to just be generally kind. Thank you for watching.